I've read about it, that seems to be the norm. 3 or more goes into a primary, and then 2 come out and go to the
Well,
general.
if there's only 2 people running,
They
though,
go straight to the general.
right, okay.
Why wouldn't it be settled as a primary?
Or it could be either way. It could be either way.
Well,
I'm sorry.
okay. Just telling you what they said the charter review committee wanted was if there were only 2, it would go straight to the general because of voter turnout. And I see logic in that. You have a lot better turnout at the general election than you are in the primary. I don't know how the school board does it, but
The school board settles it in the primary. Yeah.
Steve's blocking you
Hey,
completely.
would you get up there?
Would you mind coming up here and
This is informal, but people need to hear you.
Okay, here's what it reads. If 2 or more candidates, neither of whom is a write-in, that means a write-in candidate is someone that comes in and qualifies as a write-in. I've never had one myself. Now, on the state level, I think on the federal level, you see write-in candidates.
But they
That
do have
means-
to qualify. They can't just,
Yes.
they can't write in Mickey Mouse, he doesn't count.
Well, no, you can write anything you want on there, because that's what we get a lot of different things, but the actual person's name is never on the ballot. It's up to them to get the word out that they are a write-in candidate in order to put their name on that ballot.
Right.
But as I was saying, the names of those candidates shall be placed on the ballot at the primary election. If any candidate for such office receives majority of the vote, which would be 50 plus 1, the name of the candidate who receives such majority shall not appear on any other ballot unless the write-in candidate shall be deemed to have voted, wait a minute, shall appear on any other ballot unless the write-in candidate has qualified for such office. In other words, if they get 50 plus 1 in the primary, they're considered nominated for that office.
You
Then
said
when they
2
go
or more, buddy, or you said
2 or more
which would basically be any.
in any election. I've talked to other counties that have nonpartisan elections, and they have in the primary, with this particular one in 12, they had 6 candidates for an office, and then the top 2 from that went on to the general. But if it's determined in the primary, if it's only 2 people, it's not likely that you're going to see them get 50-50, but it is possible. Then if they did, those 2 would go on to the general election again, because neither one of them has the majority of the votes.
But if one gets 51%, that's it.
Right. It's done then.
Done in the primary.
But if you've got, say if 3 people's running nonpartisan, all 3 would have to automatically be running a primary, and then
Yes.
whichever.
And if you didn't have one out of those 3 that got majority of the votes, then you take the top 2. Those top 2 would go on to the general election.
What if there were 6, just thinking out loud,
6 candidates, same thing.
The
You
top
take the top
2.
2,
what if one of them got 51%?
then that would be a winner in the primary.
Done.
I think
It's a done deal at that point.
the position, I understand, but I think the position Chris was explaining to me is what the Charter Review Committee wanted anyway, and he's supposed to be here, is that 2, if you only have 2, you skip the primary and go straight to the general.
That's contrary to the law.
If it's contrary to the law, then the problem is over. You were reading the law, not what the school board does then, right?
This is the same, the school board falls under the same thing.
There you go. If that's the law, then that's it. Too bad for Chris.
Well, I think it present a problem. Say you got 2 people, and so you're thinking the 2 people are qualifying, and you're thinking, okay, well, this is going to be where you're saying go general. Then at the last minute, someone comes forward, and so the 3 would have to have a primary. So at the very last day, a 3rd person comes forward, and when those 2 were planning on going to the general the way you proposed from the charter, now they had to back up and say, okay, now we got to settle it in the primary because we got 3.
No, not really.
Now, you couldn't do that because
what
of
I'm
right
saying
up front.
Right.
That's what they want, but that's not
Yeah.
what, we can't do that. So it
I
sounds
think
like
it'd
the
be a
way
timing problem.
we need to do it like the school board does.
I can't give you legal advice. I'm just telling you what the law says.
Yeah.
And what it reads to me is that if you have 2 or more candidates, those candidates are put on the ballot in the primary election.
Yeah.
And then the determination is from there.
I like that.
Well, and the question would be whether Chapter 105, which is what you're reading from, actually takes up the whole field of law so that you couldn't have something different through your charter provision. And I don't think there's a good answer to that. There's certainly some very strong language in Chapter 105, but there's also some precedence out there that says there is room for counties to do different things. Not on this issue. This issue has not been heard by a court.
Is what Buddy's quoting for a partisan primary or for a
For a nonpartisan
Nonpartisan,
election.
nonpartisan,
Chapter
period.
105 covers nonpartisan elections.
Now, if we were to do this, are all the elections, all the constitutionals, does everybody fall into nonpartisan?
If your charter change includes all constitutionals, that would it be?
I'd say yes. That's what my motion's gonna be. Sheriff, Buddy, everybody.
I'd second that.
I personally don't have a problem with being nonpartisan because, you know, when we deal with everything, so it's, you know.
Especially you. I mean, supervisor elections certainly should be a partisan office.
Right, and there a number of offices throughout the state are nonpartisan on the election side.
Yeah.
They may not be nonpartisan on the others.
Buddy can always grab a ballot box and
That's right.
run away.
It says
All of the times I was on the city elections, all of the city elections are nonpartisan.
Right, and your special districts are also nonpartisan. I can hear, we have soil and water seats here in Wakulla County, the District for Soil and Water, they're all nonpartisan as well.
I'd say to keep it simple, the way the school board does it follows the law, right? Then everybody's on the same page.
But the ultimate thing that we can decide is just to put it on the ballot and let the
Correct.
citizens determine. You know, we won't be, the actual vote won't come from us. It'll just, we'll vote to put it before the board, before the citizens.
This one comes straight from us. Jerry was just asking about the advisory committee. No, we as a board can propose charter amendments straight up anytime we want to, right? So, they have said that they had a unanimous agreement on this, and the reason we're moving forward with this now is to make sure it goes in and gets on the ballot this year. You know what I mean? And I think
So why would you want it on the ballot this year as opposed to on the ballot when there's a presidential election and more people can vote?
that was what came from the Charter Review Committee. They thought it was important enough to go ahead and move forward with it. But I don't think it's gonna kill anybody not to have it done now.
The other thing is, you know, we're talking about the mechanisms and the technical aspects of nonpartisan elections, and I think we need to have, the board needs to have, and I think the community needs to have, a discussion on the pros and cons of nonpartisan election system. You know, I don't know, you go on online now and you pull up anything you want and op-ed, you know, this is something that goes on throughout the country. So there's pros and cons, and some of them I never even thought of until you start reading this stuff.
Well, this is the workshop we scheduled to discuss it, so let's go ahead.
Well, it sounds good. Let's see. I mean, I made up some copies for you all take a look at, but what I'm saying is, this is just a little brief introduction. You know, I think that, I guess one of the points I'd like to make here is that, well, one, it's not maybe as simple as we think it is. It's simple to do it. You know, we put it on the ballot, the people vote on it, and then we get nonpartisan elections, and we have, like what Leon County has. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm not saying, what I'm saying is, before we go into that, we need that discussion, and we need to understand all of the pros and cons. Now, there's stuff out there that you know, some people think that it's good that someone's put on the line, that they're a Republican or a Democrat or a Green or an Independent, and it tells you who they are, and if they don't really know who that person is, at least they know he represents the Green Party and I'm going to vote for him, or not. And with the non-party affiliation, that they don't have that there. So whether it is good or bad of voting a party line, that becomes absent in a, now there's still politics in it, it doesn't take the politics out, and you go up to Leon County and and everybody knows who's a Democrat and who's a Republican, even though they're non-party affiliation, and they're supporting him in the ways that they're supporting him. But to a person that is unfamiliar with certain of the candidates, having a no-party affiliation and not being involved in the political discussions, they a little bit at a loss of who they want their vote to go to.
Well, 2 points. Number one, I think that's what you're saying is kind of one of the main reasons I want to do it personally, is that if you're not willing to research the candidates and you simply go in and vote R or D because you don't want to take the time to learn the candidates, I think that's wrong, personally. I think you should vote for the person, not the party. I know a lot of people just vote the party line. I've heard people say that out, which, I think's wrong. And I think the school board has done nonpartisan for years in this county, and it's been successful, I think, buddy. No problems that I know of. And maybe that's a little bit less of a political hotbed to run for school boards, but I'm sure there are bad points that I haven't read this, obviously. I just got it, but...
I think there are going to be, to give merit to what Commissioner Castro was saying, there are going to be a lot of citizens that they do look for that. I mean, it's just, but they can take that into consideration whenever they go and they actually vote for it on the referendum, whether they want to or not. But there are a lot of citizens that they look for that to identify the candidate that they're going for, because in today's political world there is a clear distinction between those who are Republican and those who are Democrat.
Not so much on a local level, though.
Mm-hmm.
Donnie Sparkman's a Democrat. He is as conservative as anybody you'll ever
Right.
going to meet.
Mm-hmm.
This county used to be, if you were a Democrat, that means you were conservative. Used to mean if you were Republican, you were liberal. And that's really, several years ago, that's the way it was. I don't like the fact that somebody votes simply because I'm going to vote for them because they're a Republican, or I'm going to vote for them because they're a Democrat. I think they should.
Well, we all have our opinions about what people should be doing when it comes to the reality of how many people do their research, how many of us sitting on this board really know the backgrounds on all those judges when we come to vote on them. Okay? I need help. I don't,
I just
it's
vote
tough.
no to all of them.
Well,
There you go.
you say, oh, just vote for all of them. Well, I don't think that's an informed way of voting. I think you have to go out there and try to get information. And there are some, I don't know if I included in there's one, either editorial or what, that basically claimed that, now we're all sitting up here, we're all registered Republicans, claiming that going to no party affiliation, and this is not something I'm saying for myself, I'm just saying there are articles out there claiming that this helps the Republican Party. First time I came across that, doing this research, it never would have entered my mind that, but there are people that opinion that, and they give their opinions why. But I think that I think the big point is for me is, and I run as no party affiliate, so
It sounds like this person that wrote this may be slightly
they're
partisan.
and they have the same kind of articles from the other.
I
Oh
understand.
yeah. I'm just saying they're op-eds. They're not factual.
Right.
They're opinion pieces. I run as no party affiliation, a registered Republican, and my initial gut is that it's a good thing, but I would like as many people voting on this thing as possible, and I like to see it on the presidential year. I'd be all for it if that was the case.
Well, I'm in favor of this going before the people in the referendum, and I think I think citizens need to have an opportunity to vote for it, and I'm undecided at this moment how I would vote. Whenever I went to cast my vote on it, I'm undecided which way. But as far as voting on this commission to give it to the citizens to vote on a referendum, I'm in favor of that.
Buddy, what's the turnout on a non-presidential year versus a presidential year, roughly? I'm not going to put... What's a UPC? Yeah, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, that meant universal product code. Is that the bar stamp thing you have on the cereal box? Yeah. Anyway.
I just think everybody, no matter what the party affiliation, gets to vote for that rate. Every ballot.
I'm talking about presidential year,
You know,
primary versus, general.
2010, we had 30, I think it's 38 to 63, primary to general.
Okay.
12, we had 32, 79, 7.
So there's a
Significant.
10 or 12 point spread.
that's pretty significant.
I'm not in any big rush, to be brutally honest with you. I don't
I'm not
mind.
either, and I wouldn't mind waiting to put this at the presidential year for that reason
I'd be all for it.
That's fine
because
with me.
I
Be all for it.
I think any you know I think that's true.
That's fine.
Okay.
I may not be here, but I don't care. At least I'm there.
No,
Well, if you do that, the charter could, if the charter comes through, the charter review committee could bring it through then as well.
Well, and the Charter Review Committee also may want to consider the,
I do too.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a good idea, it's a good idea this time around or next time around, so.
We've got the Charter Review Committee already advocating to do this and to do it now. So I will vote for doing it right now as we go.
and I'd like to just comment to that, Mr. Chairman, that we have issues that are time sensitive. You know, I would have preferred that if there was a ballot initiative on the wetlands and it wasn't pushed, that it would have been on a presidential year as well. I think that when we have things that aren't emergent, they really should be in an election cycle where we have the most of our citizens that are going to, and 12% or so is a lot of citizens that are going to miss that.
I wish Chris was here. He could tell us if it's a crisis or not. I suspect it's not. So.
Well, you basically have the Charter Review Committee that we appointed that has done their studies and their due diligence, whatever, and they say that they want to put it on the ballot now.
No. It's a little bit different. If the Charter Review Committee comes with their full list of recommendations, and I guess would we be compelled to put it on the ballot this year? If they finish their work and come to us and say, here's the 5 things we want citizens to vote on,
Yeah, it would go on,
the next,
so long as there's enough time. I mean, I don't know when they,
it would go on the next election. So if they finish their work up and this is one of the 3 or 4 recommendations, then yes, it will be on the next ballot. They wanted us to pull this one issue out and go ahead and move forward with it, which I agreed, but I don't have any problem waiting. It's not the end of the world. I mean, nothing.
From my view, I would like to go ahead and get it on with it.
Me too.
Are they going to have the rest of the things ready for the charter committee to be voted on this coming up election cycle, or?
We don't know. We were happy that you had taken the lead on this. There's no way to know for sure that everything will be.
That's correct.
And Randy, you stated, just like we stated, but in our defense, we hadn't sent it to our attorney, so we didn't know what to do. But it's just been law to us. But
Okay.
yes, but we don't know that everything will be ready to go on the 2014 ballot, and that's why we were glad that you guys were doing this.
Is it the Charter Committee's moderately strong desire that just go ahead and go on the ballot now? Or is it something you think could wait to go with everything else at one time? Or do you think it would be smarter to split it up so we don't have 5 or 6 things on one election year?
That's a hard call. It's our desire to get most of the work that we've done because so much of it is very much, it's important and it's sort of timely to get it done. We intend to have something ready for, and I would guess that this partisan, nonpartisan, if you guys don't do it, I would guess that it'll be one of the things that we do.
Well,
You know, what are the reasons, what are the pros and cons of doing this, and that discussion needs to be, you know, I hear 2 commissioners saying that they want this to go on in 2014 and instead of 2016. What is the reason for that? What is the necessity for that?
Well, I mean, I'll answer. I think it's a good idea. I think it takes the politics out of it. I think it puts a situation where if you've got multiple players, then that's going to be sorted out in the primary. You know, it just makes it easier. And if the top 2 emerge, then you've got 2 in the general election. So at the general, well, in either situation, whether the person wins in the primary or the person wins in the general, that person is always going to have greater than 50% of the vote. If we've got 5 people in the primary or 5 people in the general, one person could win with, 22% of the vote or something. So to me, it levels the playing field. If it's a good idea, it's a good idea now, or it's a good idea 2016. Is it the end of the world? No, but if it's a good idea, why not? Let's go ahead and do it.
And Howard, there is an argument to be made that people that vote on an off-year election maybe are a little bit more engaged
That's correct.
in politics,
That's
not just
definitely
showing
correct.
up because it's a presidential election. So there is that argument.
Yeah, and you could make the argument that it might be maybe one party more than another also, which is a dangerous slope to go on. But no, I just like to see the majority. We know historically presidential elections, most of, have significantly higher turnout. This is a change in our charter. Most of the people should have the opportunity to vote on it. It leaves more room for, if it was an emergent thing, I'd be
I just
saying-
think we put 15 good people on the Charter Advisory Committee, and they pretty much recommended that we look at this and go forward with it. I think we should just put it on the vote and take it out.
And I heard them mention that they may come back with 5 items, they may come back with 25 items, who knows? And I think the larger that list goes, the more they're going to lose interest in the voters. And so this is one of those things we can take off of that list, and if we think it's important, we can move it now. They may hit theirs 2014, they may hit theirs 2016, and that's one thing that we can kind of less convoluted, that we can go ahead and address that and deal with it now. I don't see any reason to wait.
Howard, if you're concerned, and I understand you're concerned about the voter turnout is greater, if that's the only deal killer for you, I don't know if it's I said I didn't mind, but it's not a deal killer about it.
Yeah,
I don't think it's...
I understand, but I think also there's, let's be careful when we speak. This is not going to take the politics out of anything. The politics are there. I mean, if you go up to Leon County for an election, do you think they're apolitical up there because they call themselves no party affiliation? Come to some of the Republican meetings every month at the Capital City Club and see how political it is. It is maybe even more political than we are down here. So it's not taking the politics out of anything. And you're right, Commissioner Merritt. We think it's a good idea. It's important that as many of the citizens get to vote so that they think it's either good or bad and let their voice be held. And that's why it's important to me that it be a presidential. I don't think that unless we do something radical from our perspective, saying we have some kind of budgetary crisis, we need to take a bull by the horns, and we now need to dictate what our constitutional officers are going to be paid, or we're going to be paid, or anything else, and this has to happen in the next election cycle, no matter if it's presidential or not. I can understand that. That's an urgent thing, but this isn't.
I said it didn't break my heart to push it to 2016, but it's also not a deal killer. I'm going to kind of go on their recommendation. If they think it's important enough that let's go ahead and do this now so we can make sure it's done, because we may not get another shot at it.
Well, was this a straw vote, or was this everyone present for this thing?
I think it's a 14-member vote, and whatever you guys, if you guys kick it down the road in 2016, we don't know who's going to be sitting up there after 2014. If you guys are going to do it, now's about to do it.
Well, that answers my question.
And here's what I mean about the politics. I mean, you're absolutely right. We're never going to take politics out. I totally agree with that. But the way it stands now, in my last election, I'm a Republican, so I was first on the ballot because we got a Republican governor. If there's a Democrat that's the governor, the Democrat's going to be first. That's politics coming into play. This way, it'd be an alphabetical listing. There's no priority, one person having the advantage of another. Like you, people came up to me and said, are you an R or a D? And that made a difference if they told me they're going to vote for me or not in some cases. And that's okay. They have the option of doing that, and I'm for that if that's what they choose to cast their vote. But I think this kind of takes some of that out of it, and who knows, that same person may say, well, I'm going to vote for everybody that's on the top of the list because I don't know any of them anyway. or I'm gonna vote for all the non-incumbents. I mean, we are never gonna separate that stuff out. I just think that it levels the playing field a little bit. And you know, I was dead against it when you first brought it up, and I've thought about it a lot since then, and I've changed my position.
I may have to change my name then to AAA Randy Merritt, like his phone book.
If we put this issue on this, you know, on this year's ballot, do y'all think that it would make any bearing with a how, you know, because we've already have a very important issue on the referendum. What bearing do you think this will have that now someone will have two to consider versus the one? Because I view I view this referendum would be, to me, just as important as the other. They would both be very, very important, and they would both be changing of the charter.
That's a good point, because y'all are gonna end up with 4 or 5 recommendations, right? At some point. So if we at least break a couple out now, we won't have, in 2016, 10 items for people to vote on. We can go ahead and get 1 or maybe even 2. I know y'all had another unanimous vote about you have to live in your district at the time of qualifying, and you have to prove it. And I think that was a unanimous vote too, right? And that may be something else we can peel out.
Those are the only 2 unanimous votes that I'm aware of that the group has had, other than to adjourn the meeting.
You know, that may be something else we might want to look and go ahead, since it was unanimous, go ahead and do that now to get it out of the way, so we don't have a lot coming in 2016 legislation. But they haven't recommended doing that, so my agenda item tonight only addresses nonpartisan. If they do come back and say, hey, we want you to do this, I'll be happy to bring that one back too.
I think that this thing is the one that went through us with the latest discussion. Everybody was, yeah, let's do it. That was it.
Buddy, when do you need, if something's going to go on this general election, what is your cutoff? Okay. Okay.
Well, then my motion tonight is
Well, I want to ask another question too.
No motion.
Okay, say if it's the
tonight.
yeah.
Tonight.
Hey, Randy, if it is decided in the primary, you know like the way it is right now in November, you know, you're sworn in as a commissioner or constitutional officers like the latter part of, or the first part of December. Okay, if this is decided in the primary, does that mean that the first meeting after the primary, or you would still have to wait until
I got
December?
elected in August. I got elected
Okay.
in August.
But you don't get...
Then I decided I'd start watching the board meetings at least, since I knew I was going to be up here. But I didn't actually sit here till I was sworn in.
So regardless of whether it was primary, it's still going to get sworn in December.
Okay, same.
Okay.
But you could have a sitting commissioner get beat in August and be a lame duck all the way till December.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully they wouldn't be spiked.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to address AKA Merritt, Commissioner Merritt, AKA.
Thank
Is
you.
that how you go by now?
Triple A.
Oh, it's triple A.
First
Wow.
in the phone book.
Wow. Well, no, I was just fooling around with you.
All right, but I'm in favor of this going before the citizens, and if it's agreeable with the board, I would go along with it being on this upcoming election.
Now, as far as my motion tonight, not now, do I need to specify what we just said, or we just, follow the direction the board gave in the workshop earlier in the day?
Well, I mean, your motion needs to be, what officers do you want it to apply to?
Direct staff to prepare a charter referendum, and I guess we'll have to vote on that again, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll just say, in accordance with the direction provided in the workshop.
But what is that? I mean, is
All
it
yes, all constitutional officers.
all constitutional officers, and you're going to follow the 105
And
process, or do you
and
want to try and
commissioners.
deviate?
Yes, all constitutional. I assume we are constitutional officers. Right?
You're called for in the Constitution.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So, commissioners, the sheriff, property appraiser, tax collector, supervisor of election.
Yep.
Because in the county, both of the cities and school board are already nonpartisan, so right now the constitutional's the only ones that's not. So that would
And
make
follow
everybody-
the procedure, that's the same procedure the school board uses, right? Buddy?
Chapter 105.
And Howard, I understand your presidential
Yeah.
thing, but it's just not a compelling.
It's not worth the battle to me either.
Well, if that's if.
I don't know where Chris Russell's at.
But I would also hope that there's not a whole ton of things coming out of this Charter Review Committee that, I mean, it can't be that much wrong with our county. And I think that giving citizens a few things to learn about is a lot better than giving them a dozen things to try to learn about. It ain't going to happen.
Well, and also one good thing about moving forward now would be if, the way I was just talking to Heather about it is if say for instance, the Charter Review Committee has 4 issues, that'll be lumped together. So, am I right? Or they'll be listed singly?
I think you're talking about the office.
No, they'll be listed singly? Okay, never mind.
I
There
think
goes
that,
that.
I don't know.
There goes
I
that.
think that's real important too, that whatever their issue is, everybody be able to vote on that individual
Well,
item
everybody
and
will be-
issue.
we had a
Mhm.
communication here.
Talking about
It-
She
it-
was talking about an apple and I was talking about orange.
Because if it wasn't, somebody would vote against the whole thing
That's
just for
right,
one
exactly.
issue.
If y'all have another issue you think's important, like the living in your district to qualify, like I said, if you want to just bring it and say, we'd like you to put this on 2014 also, then
Something else that we have like a 14 or
exactly. Well, all we have right now is one item, but if you want to go ahead and push the other one forward about living in your district to qualify, go ahead and get Chris or...
Our meeting is tomorrow night.
Perfect.
Make sure that word
Yep.
goes out.
And if you want to bring it back up, let me know and I'll put it on the agenda again.
And
I don't know what.
I don't know if they just voted to have nonpartisan, or they said we want nonpartisan with this.
It was to do nonpartisan, and then we never got it sent to our attorneys.
Right.
To get like final wording on it or something.
Well,
I
and
think
then-
it'd be a make or break, Steve, if Chris knew that he couldn't do it the way he thought it could be done because it's not in compliance with the law. I don't think that would make or break it. If it is a make or break deal for y'all, can y'all talk about it tomorrow? And if it is, if you do say, no, that's not what we want, then we'll just pull it off.
We can do that also. I think one of the, it was the way Randy stated it earlier, but we didn't know the law.
Mhm.
Because of our attorney.
Right.
And whatever the law came back is the way we were going
Mhm.
to do it.
The nonpartisan thing was the main point, I think.
is there any more discussion amongst commissioners or anybody about the workshop?
And one more question. We're still trying to figure out how this workshop got scheduled at 4 o'clock. Howard, you had suggested it, right?
Yeah, I don't think I suggested 4 o'clock.
I know I did. You know me well enough to know I'm not going to have a workshop at 4 o'clock. Huh?
I got 4 o'clock in her sheet.
Are you serious?
It's your fault, Randy.
Because remember I said just as long as it's before the meeting.
I never said 4
You
o'clock.
said 4.
No, I'm not blaming on
said
you.
4.
I agree with you about having a workshop. I said as long as it's before the meeting.
Well, that's 4 o'clock.
I said
Before.
before. She took that as 4 o'clock.
What's that southern drawl you pronounce 4?
Yeah.
That means you gotta buy dinner since we got a little
That's
time
right.
left.
I had a little
Hamburgers all
lag
around.
in my speech there. But anyway, for future reference, absolutely never want to have a workshop at 4 o'clock if we can have it at 5.
Or we
Well,
blame it on
um,
Jessica, she's not here.
Unless you have
Blame it on
multiple
her.
workshops, like we've had in the past, when we had one at 4 and another one at 5, then we went into the meeting.
Absolutely. But
Unless
if
you
there's
have
only
multi-
one.
Buddy, you got...
I was listening to the discussion.
He was talking about the partisan issues. A nonpartisan election doesn't mean the candidates can be a member of a party. Because
Right.
they can be registered with whomever party, whatever party they want. It's just the elections under nonpartisan procedure is they can't use party in any of their campaigning. Now, but
Does that mean that if you're at somebody's house and they say, are you a Republican or Democrat, does that mean that we're barred from answering that question?
No.
I mean...
No,
You can't
because
put it
I-
on your sign,
All right.
say,
Okay.
it's all Charles Hart.
The nonpartisan is just running the nonpartisan. It doesn't mean you
Right.
can't be a member of a party.
Right,
You can
okay.
even receive a campaign donation from the Republican Party on a nonpartisan race.
You just can't make that part of your, this is why you should elect me, it's because I'm a Republican, or because I'm Democrat.
Right.
Right, they can't be part of your
Right.
oratory.
Resume,
Or your oration, or,
or
you know,
dossier.
when you're speaking.
And it
you're-
can't
you
be
know,
on any of your, of your written or electronic communication, right?
Correct, but
Okay.
also your verbal.
Okay.
And you can't be out there saying, you know, I'm a Republican, vote for me. Yeah, it's different if someone asks you, are you a Republican?
What
But if
happens
you-
at the, I'm gonna beat this dead horse, but what happens? at
We
the-
have another hour and a half.
Yeah.
I can't believe
Thanks
Randy's
to you.
talking this long, so
Yeah.
it's...
The Republicans get
We
together-
wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for you, Randy, but go
I
ahead.
understand. Well, was it before?
Hamburger time.
4 o'clock. The Republican functions you go to up there, for example, if Ron DeLoge goes, I don't know if he's ever been to one. Does he politic as a Republican at these things, or are you saying he's barred from doing that?
Look, where I go is to the Republican meeting, luncheon. It's all Republicans.
Right.
I mean, everyone there is, if they're running for a race, they're asking for the fellow Republican
I'm just not
support.
so sure about your earlier statement you made.
If you're out doing a debate, another commissioner, my opinion is, not the attorney, okay, but my opinion is, you're not supposed to get up there during your debate and say, you know, I'm a Republican, even though I'm running as no party affiliation here because it's it's a nonpartisan race, but I'm a Republican and I want you to vote for me because I'm a...
Does anybody have an answer to that question?
You know, I would think that would not be correct, simply
I don't
because
know. I don't know.
I could be running as a Democrat today, and I could put my name on the ballot as a Democrat, and everywhere I go, I can be telling the folks, really, I'm really not a Democrat, but I'm really a Republican, but I'm just running as a Democrat.
Rhino.
Well, I paid some money for that opinion, and, you know, it was a lawyer that told it to me, so I just sort of,
You know how lawyers are, though,
yeah,
Howard.
well, supposed to know his stuff.
All right, if there's no other discussion, we'll go on ahead and adjourn the workshop.
Thank you.
Randy, you gonna go get dinner for all of us?
That's right.
I'll be at
We're all
Hardee's
here
eating
because
my
of you. I like
junior
my
cheeseburger.
I like my cheeseburger all the way.